Chapter 2 The Bake Off is Coming, read by Cathy P.S. Oh, what an exciting day it was going to be for the Cupcake Clubbers. The entire college would be witness to the competition. They could smell it already. A dash of fear, a whip of competitiveness, and a good old stirring of courage would all be blended into the competition, and the heat would literally be on. The Cupcake Clubbers felt sure that they had a really good chance at winning, especially if team spirit was at the core of the competition. Whilst the other competitors previous to this enjoyed their nights out on the town and loved strutting their stuff on the dance floor each and every Saturday night, it gave the Cupcake Clubbers ample time to whip up cake storms in the kitchen. The clubbers made full use of their time and perfected new and mind-dazzling creative ideas, intricate and jazzed-up inventions that the others hadn't even thought of before. Only 4 groups had managed to get their lazy college butts into action and took initiative in entering into the competition. The remaining college students opted for spectatorship from the fun comfort of the audience arena. Now, the first of rivals of the Cupcake Clubbers were a group of about 12 girls. I say about 12 of them because they were all so hard to count. The reason being that these blonde clones were each one a carbon copy of the other. Boring, yes, I know it would seem so, but the Cupcake Clubbers were not ones to judge. They were far above that kind of thing. It wasn't their cool style, although the rest of the college couldn't help but snigger behind the backs of the pink stiletto-heeled slaves. Followers of fashion. Even before the bake-off, they were still beguiling themselves that they were models on an imaginary catwalk, although the red carpet was nowhere to be seen. Strutting their stuff was simply a mode that these girls just couldn't shake off that easily. Even during the competition, they were dressed to kill, wearing hotter than hot pant shorts, which some of the girls kept on tugging at uncomfortably. But no matter how hard they tugged, the shorts just couldn't be stretched any longer. All they had to blame was Sharon, who kept on encouraging them with the same statement, "Less is more, girls, less is more." Sharon believed that the way to coax the judges into winning was by appearance. Especially if there was a cute judge guy, how could he not pick them as the winners? He wouldn't be able to resist the hot pants for sure, she pathetically reassured herself. That it was an innocent requirement of a cake competition to set out to seduce any male judge into picking their group. "You've got to be kidding," Shaz thought to herself as she eyed the other Shaz up in the group. She was wearing next to nothing. She felt sorry for the group. Did they actually believe that they could win the votes of the judges by dressing so provocatively? Please save it for the hubby. But intent on embarrassing themselves, there was nothing that the Cupcake Clubbers could do to deter them, although Shaz wished she could do something to prevent them from the impending mortification eventually coming around the corner. The Sharon clan continued to waddle around the kitchen like comical Jemima Puddle Ducks from a Beatrix Potter story in their stilettos and hot pants. How the day would turn out, they just didn't know. But your guess was as good as mine. It was definitely going to be an eventual one. Team Darcy or Team Bingley? Now, we haven't been introduced to all the members of the Cupcake Clubbers, but please be patient. Oh, all right, if you really can't wait, let me bring to life an interesting member of the group, namely Jessica. She was one of Shaz's nearest and dearest friends. They had been next-door neighbours since Shaz was 3, but she could only stay in the group for a couple more weeks because her dad had landed a job in Korea at a top pop music company, or should I say K-pop business. Shaz was so jealous that it wasn't her moving to Korea, but still looked forward to meeting Jessica and her family there, although she didn't know how Jessica would cope in such a busy city like Seoul, when she was a devoted fan of pastoral, quiet English countryside and into English classics so much that Shaz worried she actually felt like she lived in them. Now Jessica stood eyeing up the Sharon clan. She peacefully stroked her long flower power skirt. A feeling of relief cascaded down on her as a trellis of roses in a flower garden demurely covering the empty dull spaces in it. Jessica was the main daydreamer in the Cupcake Clubbers. She was blatantly obsessed with Jane Austen books and the era of Pride and Prejudice. She was wondering what Jane Austen herself would have thought of at such an abhorrent display of flashy legs and obvious to Jessica a lack of overgarments. Jessica and Jane Austen merged into one sometimes. She loved to quote her heroine's words. Jessica had fanciful notions of how women should behave. She was all for speaking up for herself. After all, one of her favourite characters, Lizzie Bennet, could hardly be called suppressed, oppressed, or backward thinking, right? She represented a lively, confident, and often outspoken type of girl. Jessica was often fashioned Jessamine was often fashioned in a sense. She was often old fashioned in a sense. She lingered in an era of floaty, elegant dresses and where men treated women with Mr. Bingley like courtesy. I say Mr. Bingley first and foremost rather than Mr. Darcy, because although Mr. Darcy is without a shadow of a doubt appealing to most young girls and even mature hip chicks, there was something light and cheerful about Mr. Bingley. Imagine if Mr. Darcy eventually changed back into his moody, judgmental self when Lizzie first met him. Inevitably, one day Miss Lizzie might end up regretting choosing him and may even start to yearn for a Mr. Bingley type instead. Why did Mr. Darcy lovers find moodiness so appealing anyway? To be sure, it seems sexy and alluring in books, but totally unattractive in real life. Jessica often stood still, lost in her thoughts and daydreams, wondering about those little issues that intrigued her. Her philosophical mind had now wandered off from our two popular heroes, Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley, and onto Jane Austen, the innovative author herself. Jessica imagined an afternoon tea situation in Jane Austen's time. It seemed fitting, and she wondered what Jane Austen herself would have thought about cupcakes, and whether these dainty, scrummy, yummy cakes of lusciousness would have been up to her standards in terms of elegance and class. Class being of vital importance in those times amongst the middle to upper classes. Jessica escaped out of her daydreams momentously. She was now absorbed in her masterpiece. Eyeing it up, she was happy with her decorating skills, although there was always ample room for improvement. The decorative art of upping the cakes to a new and improved level lay mostly in her capable hands. She could have been a renowned surgeon by the way her steady hand weaved frosting in and out of the endless array of cakes, all looking identical to each other after she had finished, and just as careful as a surgeon who worked on his or her stitching techniques. So did Jessica on her decorating skills. Shaz was humming loudly at her side, totally focused on some limey, zesty, banging and slamming swirly designs. Shaz was Jessica's right-hand man, or maybe Jessica was Shaz's right-hand man. Somehow these two girls were always thrown together in a competition. This was mostly because it was completely comical to watch these two comparatively different friends working side by side. It was totally amusing. Shaz was all about the funk. Her modern style often challenged Jessica's more traditional conservative styles. There was nothing conservative about anything Shaz did. In fact, the very notion of being in love with anything Jane Austen, Mr. Bingley, and Mr. Darcy bored her brains out. What was Jessica doing, living in an era of uncomfortable breathing, breath squeezing corsets where women weren't even allowed to vote, and whatever possessions they did have belonged entirely to the men? Was she nuts? Totally in Shaz's eyes. And who liked to wear long dresses all the time anyway? Imagining a time where there were no jeans freaked Shaz out, and although she doted on Jessica in her own special way, she equally detested the infatuation she had developed with a long time gone, and where only the rich and mega wealthy had a luxurious life. What about all the servants? What about the poor people and the lack of vaccinations and antibiotics? Shad would often debate these vital facts with Jessica, who was oblivious to the actual difficulties of living in those long gone times. But Jessica had her head in the clouds most of the time, and her romanticized views of life in those times clouded her sound judgment, or so Shaz thought. As Shaz glanced at Jessica's elegant cream cheese vanilla indulgent designs, she found it totally hard to repress her shock at how boring and plain the outdated designs looked. Make them funkier, Jessie baby. Add some glitz and glamour to them, girl. She would advise the fashion disaster. Jazz it up a tad more, sweet. You get what I'm saying, babes? Shaz spoke so loudly at the competition, mostly out of frustration, and also because she had one of those booming vocal cords which echoed round the whole hall louder than a Jennifer Lopez concert. Most of the college spectators were now watching the two girls. Shaz was flustered, and with her hands remaining defiantly on her hips, she circled around Jessica's designs again and again, like an intrepid cyclone, shaking her head all the while. Shaz was the loudest and most outspoken member of the group. She said whatever was in her mind, but still had a heart of gold. The rest of the girls knew her personality by now and realised she never meant it in a negative way, although Jessica was slightly more sensitive than the others, but was really good at hiding it. Meanwhile, Jessica kept nodding sweetly at Shaz's advice to spruce up her designs, although she still kept on with her painstaking classical designs, much to Shaz's displeasure. These two were as different as chalk and cheese. If Shaz could be summed up, it would be really difficult to do. However, it could be said that she was into modern fashion as devotedly as a top model, cool speech, and anything bling bling, glitzy, and glam. Jessica, on the other hand, was more elegant and modest. She reminded Shaz of a cloud floating along. She always seemed to smell of fragrant organic rose hand cream. You know, that type of scent which your granny often wore. This totally grossed Shaz out. Why did young girls want to smell and resemble old women anyway? Ugh. It had ruffled Shaz's feathers so much one day that she felt she just had to do something about it. Shaz had kindly attempted to improve Jessica's taste in perfumes. She popped into Debenham's department store one wintry morning and took ages in sampling all the latest fragrances. Buying a couple of limited editions for herself, she just couldn't resist. Shaz eventually decided to purchase the latest Mariah Carey perfume. This purchase was excellent, she thought. It was even gift wrapped in a stylish bag, plastered with high digital images of the singing phenomenon herself. And to Shaz, whoever didn't love this amazing husky voice legend was clearly on another planet. She proudly presented the thoughtful gift to her conventional friend, which Shaz felt was her duty as the leader of the Cupcake Clubbers to set a proper fashion trend. After all, Jessica's old-fashioned habits may even rub off on the cupcakes, a disaster in the making. To her disappointment, the well thought out gift still remained after 2 years at the top of Jessica's wardrobe, inevitably collecting lots of dust by this time. Jessica always reassured Shaz that she was saving the fashionable brew, as she liked to call modern perfumes, for a very special occasion. Shaz, assuming that Jessica meant her wedding day, lost all hope. After all, how would Jessica ever find a man? It was highly unlikely that he would step out of a Jane Austen novel. To Jessica's relief, Shaz gave up asking about it. She knew that the special occasion would never come around. Shaz couldn't help but think that it was Jessica's way of letting her down kindly. Now, getting back to the Girls Aloud clones, the leader of the pack was the one and only Sharon. Sharon was the only one who could confidently claim that she was a real blonde, and not a fake blonde wannabe like the rest of the group, whose only purpose in their mediocre lives was to imitate Shaz's every move. To further prove the authenticity of Shaz's true blondness, she actually kept a year-by-year photo album of pictures of her proudly posing with her bright yellow locks from about 5 years old till now. She had even stuck in samples of hair year by year, proving that the colour had hardly changed. Who even does that? Her hair had stayed the same antagonizing shade, which was sure proof to anyone who dared to enter the realm of displeasing her by calling her a fake blonde. Woe betide. Sharon, sorry to say, was a popular blonde name. If colours could have names, then Sharon would be the blondie shade. Sharon could spend a full 3 hours locked in a spacey boudoir, French for bedroom. She always called her bedroom by that name. To add effect, she was all about the drama. Her bedroom was such an elaborately gorgeous room that it seemed fitting to name it something Francais. Without a shadow of a doubt, Sharon more than liked herself. When Justin Bieber's Love Yourself song echoed again and again on the radio, somehow everyone at college immediately remembered Sharon. Her clan had tried calling her Shaz for short, which often happened to Sharons, but it began to get crazy confusing for Shaz from the Cupcake Clubbers, that in the end Shaz complained to Sharon, and after persuasion, Sharon decided against the nickname. Sharon loved the way that her reflection looked in her large cream-embellished mirror. She had set it right near to the open bay window in her bedroom, or should I say boudoir. With the blinds nearly always up, the bright and vibrant sun soaked into her room, draping its golden glow all over it in delicious bright shadows. That is, if shadows can be thought of as bright. The sun illuminated her reflection and worked its magic on her already bright blonde hair, causing it to shimmer and shine reflectively. She loved to gaze at herself when this happened, and played with the multitudinous rainbow shimmer eyeshadow shades until she finally got bored of it. Shaz loved being complimented. She loved it so much that it had become a bit of an obsession. She had an innate urge, as most girls do, to be thought of as the prettiest girl wherever she went. She confused the mesmerized looks people gave her when she went out into the great outdoors. People certainly looked at her. She lapped up her daily attention with relish. She craved the attention and loved every moment of it. In others, she found the attentiveness which her mum and dad lacked. It made her feel special and wanted somehow. Something that she rarely felt with her parents, if the truth be known. But the sad fact was that people generally looked at her because of her outrageous clothes, which caught anyone's eye. Whatever she wore had to shimmer, shine, and bling bling to the max. She was never satisfied with simple or plain clothes. If it didn't sparkle, then it wasn't worth trying on as far as she was concerned. Sharon looked hot in her fashion clothes. She spent hours and loads of time shopping in the best branded shops, or sometimes slummed it in mainstream shops like New Look, Topshop, etc. She loved the cheaper shops because she could get loads more groovy stuff for her money. The smell of the clothes drew her in. Like a mouse to cheese, the trap was enticing. It made her forget all about her worries, even about Chad for a while. He was her lifelong crush, which I will explain about later if you can wait. So she forgot her worries as mentioned earlier until she glimpsed over to the men's section by accident and immediately imagined Mr. Tall, blonde and handsome in one of the garments. She was always getting chatted up by guys. No matter where she went, presuming she was easy and a good catch, guys flocked to her. She could take her pick if she wanted to, but she wasn't interested in any of these. No matter how they looked or whatever they offered her, she only craved that one guy, her wonderful Chad, the guy she respected and doted on like no other. Everyone who glided past her in the streets or shopping centre, or whoever saw her sitting alone sipping hot choc in a cute little cafe, assumed that she was confident and popular. She was indeed both things. She had enough flair to last a lifetime, but her exterior concealed her sadness. Her filthy rich parents couldn't spend more than half an hour a day in their daughter's company. They were business driven, and making tons of money was always their priority. But Sharon craved attention. She desperately wanted to feel that her parents loved her and that she was worth spending time with. A little secret which no one at college knew about Sharon was that she was hopelessly in love with one of the Australian foreign students at her college. Chad was his name, which I gave away earlier. She didn't know why, but somehow she was drawn to him. Sharon's truest crush. This Australian heartthrob had a magnetic pull over her without even realising it. Her heart went pitter-patter, double time whenever he passed by her. She would find any excuse just to speak with him or sit opposite his table in the canteen. Her usually calm, controlled self became so flustered when he was near her. If his shoulder brushed past her in the canteen by accident, she blushed brighter than a cherry tomato. On days when her parents neglected her and she wept zillions of translucent tears at night, the next day was wonderful to her if it was a college day because she would have chance to see him. He was her calm after a thunderstorm. His cheery, kind smile comforted her and warmed her lonely days, just as a fire comforts a lost traveller in a snowstorm. That was the strange thing about true love. It made everyone, even Sharon, behave selflessly. If he was poorly, then she was restless for the whole night. She heard the college gossiping one morning about him. That handsome Aussie is down with the flu today. I heard he went to the college nurse twice already for some medicine. News spread around the college like Chinese whispers. Their muted murmurs swept across Sharon's keen ears. As soon as she heard the bad news about her fantabulous crush and his ailment, she dashed out of her class, much to the shock horror of her teacher, without an apology. She raced out of her class and never looked back. She was good at making up stories and could always pull the wool over, and would just say that she had felt nauseous on that day. The teacher and classmates would never know the truth. Sharon called up her driver. By the way, she had her own driver. He had been a trusted member of their family for so long that Cheryl's parents paid him well to take Sharon wherever she needed or wanted to go. Anyway, she called her trusted driver and ordered him to take her to the finest and most authentically organic department store in town. Shaz shopped till she dropped on that afternoon, and at night she crept to to Chad's dorm and left a gift basket of pure organic lavender honey with throat drops in every flavour. 10 boxes of organic rose-scented tissues with his name engraved on the tissue boxes, so there was no confusion who the gifts were from and who they were for. There was nothing that she wouldn't do for him. As long as he was alive and well and not struggling or suffering, then she felt a glow of peace and contentment inside. I guess that is how true love feels. So this was how Sharon truly was, even with all her showy parading around and loving all the attention of being followed around by her blonde bombshell wannabes. This was merely a mask covering her underlying insecurities. One totally annoying thing about the Sharon clan was that they couldn't just say goodbye like normal people. Oh no, that would certainly be asking too much, wouldn't it? They actually had their own royal handshake. I mean, please get a life. Their handshake consisted of a half wave of their wrists, accompanied with the most irritating high-pitched screams of "Ta-di-da, darlings!" Most of the college students cringed every time they did this, all except Pete. Now, Pete was equally infatuated with Sharon. They outwardly appeared to be the most perfect match. He was the group leader of the fantastic Flexers. His group called themselves this name because they were gym fanatics. They wore the skimpiest vest tops available for men in luminous colours, and by luminous I mean luminous. Shocking pinks, neon lemons, limey, slimy greens, and electric blues. These were the type of colours that you would find when looking for a highlighter pen. Believe it or not, they wore skinny, tight, very short denim shorts to make the outfit look even more ridiculous. And even in the dead of winter, snow and all, it totally grossed the Cupcake Clubbers out. And the worst of it all was that they really believed they were God's gift to women and sizzling hots. The last but not least group in the cupcake competition were the foreigners, which was never meant in a derogatory way. Of course it couldn't be, because this group of guys chose the name of their group themselves. All the guys in this group were studying from overseas and came with their own flipping great funky accents. There was Suho and Chen, the intelligent Koreans, Shaf and Shawais from Malaysia, who were stunningly exotic, especially Shaf, but also Shawais. They reminded the college girls of that famous Bounty chocolate advert and seemed to have stepped straight out of a book about tropical beaches with all year-round tans to match. Roberto was from Bellissimo, Italy, and was training to be a pizza chef. His imaginative and positive Italian mind fantasized about owning his own beautiful pizzeria in the heart of his beloved Venice. People would float in their masses on gondolas just to try a slice of his oozing, succulently cheesy topping, full of scattered fresh organic basil leaves and crunchy, crisp pizza crust, which was so crunchy that it almost snapped in half inside their mouths. The man who flew from the floating city of romance to achieve his dreams was an added delight to the lives of the swooning college girls. They would flock around him just to listen to his famous bellissimo, meaning beautiful, at everything he saw, from a floating delicate butterfly to a crimson-edged efflorescent flower. Everything excited his passion for the appreciation of life and touched his soft Italiano heart. You would think that being the most famous stud muffin at college, it would turn him into a big-headed jerk and treat girls like a Don Juan de Marco. But no, he was a complete gentleman, almost oblivious to the attention he procured. He was really attached to his Italian mama, and she missed him every day just as much as he missed her. Every day she would call him on his newly bought Samsung smartphone. As it rang a merry tune, he answered it enthusiastically, often at college and sometimes even during his class, much to the displeasure of some of his college lecturers. Mamma, you hear me, can? Everyone bellissimo, kind here to me. The girls many follow Roberto. Roberto think they like learn Italian accent. Me very happy, mamma. His unabashed honesty made him all the more lovable in the eyes of the eager college girls flocking around him, keener than a host of hungry swans being offered scraps of bread.